Okay, let's move on to a different type of conditioning. This is known as operant conditioning, which we're going to talk about here in Module B. And operant conditioning is different from classical conditioning in that you have a voluntary behavior that you want to shape or change to something that's more desirable or more acceptable, if you will. And so operant conditioning works on the principle of here's a behavior that somebody does that we don't really like or that we'd like to see done differently. And the reward you get or the punishment you avoid may help shape that behavior or continue a more desired behavior. So let's look at some of the basic principles and some of the early theorists on this particular theory of learning, and then we'll talk about some examples as well. So one of the earliest persons to look at this whole notion of learning by having your responses shaped or changed was B.F. Skinner. And B.F. Skinner, pictured in this particular slide, said that learning happens because of the consequences. We do something, we increase doing something because we get rewarded for it. We feel that we've got that recognition, we did well, and so we say, okay, well, if I get this recognition for something, then I must be good at it and I will continue doing it. And so for instance, think about sports. I don't know if anybody here plays any sports, but if you get a goal, you think, oh man, this is great. I feel good. That's the reward right there, that you feel good about getting that goal. And you might say, I'm going to try and get a hat trick. I'm going to try and get 3 goals in one game. And so you try to continue the behavior, whatever it was that helped you get that first goal, to continue to see if you can get 2 more goals and walk away from the game saying, I'm the hero, I got a hat trick. Skinner says that we can shape almost any behavior by giving the right rewards for that particular behavior. Now, you may say to yourself, well, no, there's things that I do that I don't get any rewards for, but I'm going to continue doing them because it's the right thing to do. And that may be the case, but he talked about rewards that we don't necessarily see or experience right away. So we call them intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So an intrinsic reward is something that's internal. So yeah, you don't see a tangible reward of, money or uh, certificate or trophy or what have you, but you've had that feeling, I feel good about what I did and I want to continue this behavior because I like that good feeling. But then, of course, we also have lots of extrinsic or external rewards, such as, you know, um, getting praise for doing a good job at your part-time job that you have, for instance, or getting a tip if you're working in the serving field. Getting a large tip, you are motivated to continue that behavior to work well for your customers. But we'll talk more about that when we talk about reinforcement and how we reinforce. But at this point, you just have to understand that operant condition is working with voluntary responses and the rewards that we get to ensure that we will increase that particular response. So some of the key concepts in Skinner's theory then are shaping, which basically means that we affect each subsequent approximation to that particular behavior that we want. So in other words, you may be trying to train your child to go to the potty. And I've heard of some parents doing this where they reward their child with a book or a cookie or juice or some little thing every time they do this. And these small rewards that they get help to shape the ultimate behavior of, going to the washroom every time they have to instead of using their diapers. The second key concept of Skinner's then is reinforcer, that thing which reinforces the behavior that we want to continue getting out of or having an animal or a person do. So sometimes it's money. You might get an allowance, for instance, for cleaning your room when you were younger, or you might get non-monetary rewards, such as, if you do this, I'll take you to dinner, or what have you. But they're tangible things that make us want to continue the behavior. Does extinction happen in operant condition? Absolutely. According to Skinner, if you did not give a reward for behavior, the behavior would fall to disarray. The animal, the child, the person, whoever you were trying to shape the behavior of, would stop because there was no reward attached to it, and therefore no motivation to continue that good behavior, whatever it may be. And discrimination and generalization also occur. One of the key experiments that Skinner did to try and demonstrate discrimination and generalization had to do with experiments he did with pigeons. And what he did is he had food rewards behind different colored discs. Now, there would only be food reward. Let's say the colored discs were orange, yellow, blue, and green. But he'd only have food behind the green one. At first, they would peck at everything. They would generalize that, because I found a reward under this green disc, probably the orange and the red and yellow one will, or the orange and the blue one will as well. But eventually, the animal learned, the pigeon learned that only the green disc produced the reward. He learned, in other words, to discriminate what's going to give him a reward and what's not going to give him a reward, what behaviors will or will not give rewards. And we'll see how this applies to our own behaviors in a little bit. So let's talk first about the reinforcer. With Skinner and operant condition, he felt that we had to give that response, we had to give a reward immediately after the correct response was given. So if we wanted to shape a response, a particular response, like good behavior of some sort, we had to give that right away. So for instance, maybe when you were in elementary school, you had teachers put gold stars or stickers of some sort in your notebooks when you had correct spelling or correct math or whatever the case may be. Skinner would call this a reinforcer, because what those stickers did is it reinforced the behavior of correct math, correct spelling, whatever the case, so that you would do it again and you would respond in the right way again, because you wanted to get more of those stickers. But reinforcing doesn't happen all at once in some circumstances. Sometimes we have to shape the behavior that we want to reinforce. Sometimes we have to give the reward, smaller rewards, to get to the approximate type of behavior that we want. So when we reinforce those approximate behaviors, the ones that are close but not quite there yet, this is called shaping. So again, let's say we want to teach a child to set the table properly. And at first the child puts down a plate but forgets to put down a spoon, let's say, or forgets to put down a fork. You reward them because they've done something, they've made some effort towards that. But you give them a bigger reward when they get it right, when they get the fork, knife, spoon, plate, cup everything that needs to be on the table for a meal. This is shaping because you reward them each step of the way they take, because it may take them many times to get to the point where they're absolutely right, where they have all the essential elements. But rather than discouraging them by saying, oh, you got it wrong, you didn't do this, you forgot to put this, or you forgot to put that, you're more likely to get the behavior of the child setting the table or learning to set the table if you say, you did a good job, we need you to do this as well. So they're sort of understanding that they're getting that praise, they're getting that, great job, you did great work, and shaping what you're really desiring them to do is to get it right without having to be told that you forgot this or you forgot that particular element. Anybody here have any superstitions? I put the Friday the 13th because as I'm recording this, we're coming up to Friday the 13th. And I thought, okay, there's a lot of people who have superstitions around it. They have this superstitious idea that it's bad luck or it's not a good time, or I had one friend who wouldn't book any appointments if it was a Friday the 13th because she was so sure that disaster would happen to her. And that's sort of an extreme example. But let's talk about some that you may or may not have heard of. For instance, hockey players. And the NHL, when they have the semifinals, they get either the Calder Cup or I can't remember the name of the two conference cups, but anyways, they get there's two conference cups that they can get for the East Division or for the West Division. And there's some superstitions around this as to whether you should touch it or not. And the superstitions, the idea behind the superstition is that in some cases, some of the players believe that if they touch the cup or if they take it and pick it up, they're not going to win the ultimate reward, which is the Stanley Cup. So they are hesitant to do that. And if you look at statistics around this, it's about 50-50. But for some reason, some people have seen that happen once or twice and believe that, oh, I don't want to chance that particular eventuality. I want to win the Stanley Cup, so I'm not going to touch this conference trophy because it's going to prevent me from winning the Stanley Cup. And that would be a superstitious behavior. They believe that coincidental concurrence, that the team that touched it the last year lost the Stanley Cup. Well, so I won't do that. They believe that those two are related when they are really just coincidence. It's just happened that way. Somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. Other related terms that I want to talk about are extinction. And so, as I mentioned before, extinction occurs because there's no reward. If there's no reward associated with a behavior, what's your motivation for continuing that behavior? Now, you have to remember that Skinner believed all our behavior is shaped by the rewards we get for it, whether it's an internal reward or some kind of external reward. And I think that's a little bit of a narrow view of us, because there are lots of things that we do that we could, if you think about it, that aren't shaped by reward. But it's an interesting concept. Certainly, if you think about your work, if you were told tomorrow that you had to go to work, but you're not going to get paid, would you still go? Probably not, right? Because you may love your job, but you also need the money that comes with that. Unless you're independently wealthy, in which case, that's not necessarily an issue. Generalization occurs because something is similar. We would behave as if there was still a reward attached to that. So, for instance, I talked about the pigeon, but if you think about it yourself, you might say, well, when I cleaned my room before, I didn't do a great job of it, but I still got a reward. So, maybe I can do that again. But the bar has probably been raised because there's an expectation that you do more in order to get that reward. And discriminative stimulus rather happens because you will start to learn that if you don't do a good enough job, you won't get the same reward as you would if you had done what was expected of you. So here's another example. Let's say 1 week at work you got a bonus because you went the extra mile, you went the extra distance. And so you think, well, I can always expect those bonuses at the end of my paycheck. But the next paycheck you get, you don't see the bonus on there, and you think, well, how come? What happened? And you learned that you hadn't necessarily done those extra detail things that you did the week before that allowed you to get that. And so you discriminated in behaviors that would result in a reward versus ones that would not result in an award. Okay, that's the end of this particular unit. We'll move on to talk a little bit more about other issues related to operant conditioning. Most importantly, how do we reinforce a behavior once we've taught it?